From the moment Rachel was born, with her blue eyes and big smile, everyone, especially Mom and Dad, thought she was perfect.
Me?
I was the other daughter, the one who got whatever was cheap or used. Second-hand clothes, second thoughts. Rachel needs the best, Mom would say, while going through piles of shiny new gifts for my sister. Then she'd hand me something small like a pair of socks or an old book that looked like 15 people had already read it. It wasn't just the gifts. Rachel got all the new clothes, the latest gadgets, and most of the attention. And she knew it. She grew up knowing how much everyone loved her. And really, why wouldn't she? Everyone treated her like a queen. That kind of treatment changes someone. Rachel learned early how to get what she wanted, even if it meant pushing me aside. She'd pull little tricks, like the time she broke Dad's favorite watch and hid it in my drawer. Guess who got in trouble for that?
Me.
Grounded for a month.
She was smart about it, too.
All the relatives loved her. They thought she was sweet and perfect. I was just the troublemaker, the difficult one. I heard them whispering about me, like I wasn't even there. Barbara, why can't you be more like your sister? Mom would say over and over. She never missed a chance to compare us. Rachel acted like she owned the whole house. I remember one afternoon clearly. We were in the living room, the sun making long shadows across the carpet. Rachel was dancing around in a brand new dress Mom had just bought her. One of those fancy ones you see in store windows. I looked down at my clothes, faded from too many washes, and felt that familiar sting of jealousy. Isn't she just adorable? Mom said, clapping her hands with joy. Dad was sitting on the couch, half reading his newspaper, half watching Rachel. Barbara, can you be a sweetheart and grab your sister's ballet shoes? She has recital practice soon, and you know how important it is, Mom asked, without even looking at me. I nodded and walked to Rachel's room, which was twice as big as mine and full of toys and gadgets I could only dream about. As I searched through her messy room for the shoes, I couldn't stop thinking, why her? Why not me? Here, I said, tossing the shoes at Rachel's feet, harder than I meant to. She looked up at me with her wide blue eyes, the perfect picture of innocence. Barbara, don't be rough. Apologize to your sister, Dad said, still hiding behind his newspaper. Sorry, Rachel, I muttered, my cheeks burning with shame. The only person who really understood what was going on was Grandma, Dad's mom. She was tough and didn't let anyone fool her. Gary, she'd tell my dad in a serious voice, you're blind if you think your girls are being treated the same. Barbara deserves just as much love and attention as Rachel. But Dad would just brush her off, and Mom would roll her eyes like Grandma was being too dramatic. We treat them equally, Mom would say, but her words felt empty in a house full of things they gave Rachel, and not me. After those talks, Grandma would take me aside and hold my hands tight, stronger than you'd expect for someone her age. Listen, Barbara, she'd say, her eyes sharp and full of fire. You've got to be strong. Don't let them put out your light. You shine just as bright as your sister. Her words kept me going most days. Graduation day was supposed to be a big deal, a day to celebrate everything I'd worked for. But for me, it just felt like the final proof that I was on my own. I probably should have expected it, but it still hurt. My parents flat out refused to help pay for my college. We just don't think it's a good investment, Dad said with a shrug, like my future was a bad stock or something. That's when Grandma stepped in. Her offer to pay for my education wasn't just about money, it was a lifeline. She was pulling me out of the toxic home I had grown up in. You're going to do great things, Barbara. And I want to see you get that chance, she told me. Her voice was strong. There was no room to argue. Leaving for college felt like shedding old skin. I studied law, not just because I was interested in it, but because it felt like having power, something I never had growing up. College became my world, a place where my past didn't define me. When I graduated, I didn't go back home. I rented an apartment in the city and started working as a lawyer. Rachel stayed with our parents, who were now totally under her spell. Grandma kept in touch often. She'd share stories that made it clear Rachel ruled the house. It's like watching a queen with her court, Grandma said once during a call, sounding both amused and a little sad. I didn't talk much to Mom and Dad anymore. Our talks were short and awkward, usually started by them when they wanted to remind me of Rachel's birthday or something she had done. "Don't forget your sister's turning 21 next week," Mom would say cheerfully, like that was all it took to fix things between us. But when my own birthday came around, they never said a word. It used to hurt, but each year it stung a little less. One evening, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sun go down and the city lights flicker on. Everything felt calm. That's when I decided it was time to let go. I had to release the anger, the comparisons, the pain. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose how much it controlled my future. My life had finally found a peaceful rhythm. Work, happy hour now and then with coworkers, and quiet weekends spent reading mystery novels. That is, until the day Eric walked into my office. He was a new client, sent by someone who thought I'd be the right person for his case. It was a messy business issue, nothing I hadn't seen before. But from the moment Eric walked in, I could tell he wasn't just another client. He had a calm confidence and a natural charm that didn't feel fake. "So, you're the miracle worker I've been hearing about," he said as he sat across from me, smiling in a way that was hard to ignore. I laughed, trying not to show how caught off guard I felt. "I don't know about miracles, but I'll do my best to help." The case turned out to be harder than I expected. We were pulled into long days of planning, paperwork, and late-night meetings. Eric stayed involved the whole time, wanting to understand every part of the process. That meant we saw each other a lot. One evening, after a long session, Eric paused at the door. "Hey Barbara, have you eaten yet? I'm starving, and I owe you a meal for keeping you here so late. There's a good Italian place nearby. What do you say?" I hesitated. I wasn't used to mixing work with anything personal. "Sure, why not? But just so we're clear, this is a thank you dinner. Strictly professional." "Strictly professional," he said, smiling with a playful wink, like he knew we were both thinking the same thing. Dinner was surprising. Away from the legal work, Eric was funny, smart, and full of interesting stories about his travels and business experiences. I ended up talking about my own life more than I usually do with people I barely know. When we walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air felt refreshing. "Thanks for dinner, Eric. It was nice to get out of the office for a bit," I said, and I truly meant it. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. And Barbara," he said, "once this whole case is done, maybe we could go out again. No work stuffs. Just the two of us." His honesty surprised me, but I liked the idea more than I expected. "I'd like that," I said, surprising even myself. The next few weeks were busy. We worked hard, fought through courtrooms and papers, and slowly built something outside of the case too. Quiet dinners, easy conversation, and a feeling that something real was starting. When we finally won the case, it felt even better, like a double win. As we celebrated over drinks, Eric reached for my hand across the table. "Here's to winning cases, and maybe winning over a certain beautiful lawyer," he said, eyes locked on mine. "Careful, counselor," I replied, smiling. I joked, "You might be guilty of having too much charm." Eric laughed, a real, warm laugh, and it was the perfect way to end our little celebration. Not long after that, our work relationship turned into something more. A year passed since our first dinner, and being with Eric always felt right. So, when he proposed, it wasn't just the moment that made me say yes. It was knowing I'd be with someone who truly cared about me and understood me. I said yes right away, no hesitation. We didn't want to wait too long to get married. Excited and a little nervous, I called my parents to tell them the news. Deep down, I hoped this would bring us closer. Maybe it could fix the distance that had grown between us over the years. Their reaction was, okay. Not cold, but not excited either. Still, they invited me over to talk about the wedding plans. When I got to their house, I could feel the tension right away. Mom and Dad said they were happy for me, but their words felt flat. I knew they still believed Rachel should be the first to get married, not because she was older, but because she was always the favorite. During the visit, Rachel turned on the charm. She smiled sweetly and said, "Let me plan your wedding, Barbara. I want to show you that things can be better between us." I was shocked. Before I could say no, my parents jumped in. Barbara, Rachel is trying. It would really mean a lot if you let her help, Mom said in that voice that didn't really give me a choice. Feeling pressured, I said okay. Rachel said she had everything under control. Every time we talked, she was full of confidence. Don't worry about anything, she'd say over the phone. Just focus on work. I've got it all handled. She sounded so sure that I didn't double-check anything. But as the wedding day got closer, something felt off. I decided to make a few calls myself. I called the venue, expecting them to go over the plan. Instead, they said, well, the room is reserved, but that's it. My heart dropped. I called the florist, the caterer, the decorator. Same story everywhere. Rachel had asked for information, but never followed up. No bookings. No payments. Nothing was actually done. I felt angry, hurt,
Betrayed.
but I wasn't going to let her ruin my wedding. I called Rachel, needing to hear her lie to me one last time. Hey Rachel, just checking in, is everything still on track? Oh, absolutely. It's going to be beautiful, Barbara. Don't worry about a thing, she said, sounding cheerful but fake. As soon as I hung up, I called Helen, my friend who's a professional wedding planner. I told her everything, how Rachel had completely dropped the ball. Actually, she didn't just drop it, she threw it away. And now I was only 3 weeks away from my wedding, and all I had was a booked room. Helen was shocked, but she didn't waste any time. Barbara, I've got this. Consider it done. We'll make it happen, she said with confidence that made me feel hopeful again. When the wedding day came, it was beautiful, even with all the stress leading up to it. The decorations were perfect, the music was joyful, and the guests seemed to really enjoy themselves. It was everything I had dreamed of. Still, I couldn't relax completely. I saw Rachel standing off to the side, scowling, clearly unhappy with how well everything had turned out. Then, halfway through the reception, my mom grabbed the microphone. Her voice echoed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you to Rachel. Without her, none of this would have been possible. Barbara, you should be very grateful to your sister. Everyone clapped for Rachel, who gave a small, fake smile like she was being humble. I felt my stomach twist in anger. I clenched my hands under the table. I couldn't let her take credit for something she didn't do, especially not today. I stood up and spoke clearly, cutting through the applause. Actually, I need to tell the truth. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. Rachel didn't plan any of this, I said. In fact, she almost ruined the whole thing. You could hear a pin drop. My parents' faces turned red, and Rachel stared at me in shock, her fake smile gone. How dare you say that, my mom snapped. You're attacking your own sister on your wedding day. I'm telling the truth, I said. 3 weeks ago, there were no flowers, no cake, no decorations. Nothing she promised was done. The truth stood in sharp contrast to the beautiful room around us. Rachel suddenly started crying, loud, dramatic sobs.
See? She's always hated me.
She's always trying to make me look bad, she cried. Some guests looked confused. Others shook their heads. Most seemed unsure who to believe, but Rachel played the victim so well, it was easy for them to side with her. It's not slander if it's the truth, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'm just telling the truth, I said back, feeling alone as the room filled with whispers. The tension got worse quickly. Rachel, still crying, ran out of the hall, making the moment even more dramatic. What should have been a happy celebration had turned into a scene straight out of a soap opera. In the weeks that followed, things only got worse. Rachel disappeared. She left a note behind blaming me for everything. In it, she said I had always treated her badly and that I was the reason for her pain. That note changed everything. People who had known us for years suddenly turned against me. My parents believed every word. They said I was the reason Rachel had left. Even my grandmother, the one person who had always seen through Rachel's tricks, turned cold. I can't believe you would push her to this, she said to me one day. Her words hurt more than I could explain. Then she told me she was cutting me off, likely because of all the pressure from the rest of the family and Rachel's dramatic goodbye. After that, I felt more alone than ever. Friends and family chose Rachel's side. I was left to face the silence, the judgment, and the pain all on my own. Even though I was now married to Eric, what should have been a joyful time felt heavy and dark. Our first months as a married couple were filled with distance. Eric was gone more and more. His business trips piled up like unread books on my nightstand. When we did talk, it was short and polite, just quick updates. The laughter, the closeness, the connection, it was all slipping away. One cold evening, I was sorting through bills when I found something that didn't make sense. It was a credit card receipt, $3,000 spent at a fancy women's boutique. Dresses. Accessories. I stared at it, confused. My birthday had passed, and he hadn't gotten me anything. Our anniversary was still months away. I didn't ask Eric about it. Instead, I did something that felt wrong but necessary. I hired a private investigator. His name was Henry. He was an older man with a rough voice and a serious face. "I can check into it," he said with a grunt. "But are you sure you want to know what I find?" "Yes," I told him. "I need to know." 3 weeks later, Henry called. "I've got the results," he said. His voice was calm, serious. Around that time, I hadn't spoken to my grandmother in a while, not since the drama with Rachel tore the family apart. She was older now, weaker, but her mind was still sharp. She had always understood the messy, complicated truth about our family. I went to visit Grandma. The photos, the proof of Eric's betrayal, weighed heavy in my bag. She greeted me with a weak smile, not as bright as I remembered. Pain showed clearly in the lines around her eyes. "Barbara, it's been too long," she said softly, her voice quieter than before. "I know, Grandma. I'm sorry," I replied, sitting down beside her. So much time had passed between us, filled with things left unsaid. I hesitated, then slowly pulled the photos from my bag and slid them across the table to her. She looked at them one by one, her face hard to read. After a long pause, she looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with sadness and something else. Understanding. "Oh, Barbara," she whispered, reaching out with a shaking hand to hold mine. "Your sister fooled us all, didn't she? Even me." Her words hit me hard. They were both a relief and a sting. "Yes, she did," I said quietly. "And I think Eric has too." She pulled me into a hug, fragile, but strong in spirit. "I'm so sorry, my dear. I should have listened. I should have seen." What followed was a long talk. There were tears, a little laughter, memories, regrets, and slow steps toward healing. A month later, Grandma passed away. The reading of her will was scheduled at our family lawyer's office. I went with a heavy heart. The room was full of relatives, all quietly talking, exchanging small talk and half-hearted smiles. I sat at the far end of the room, my heart racing, not just because of the will, but because I could feel the tension in the air. Eric sat next to me, but he didn't say much. He was there, but he felt distant, like a stranger. Then the door opened. To everyone's shock, Rachel walked in. She looked different, colder, more controlled. She wore a small smirk, fully aware of how her sudden appearance was affecting the room. My parents jumped up, their surprise turning quickly into happiness. "Oh, Rachel, you're back," my mom cried, wrapping her in a tight hug.
"Hi, Mom."
"Hi, Dad," Rachel said smoothly, hugging them back. But her eyes were scanning the room until they landed on Eric and me. Her smile widened. She walked straight toward him, leaned in, and kissed him. Not a friendly kiss, a possessive one. Eric didn't even look shocked. He kissed her back like it was the most natural thing in the world. The room went silent. Everyone just stared. Then Rachel turned to face us all, her smile full of pride, as if she'd just won. "I planned my own disappearance," Rachel said loudly, clearly enjoying the shock her words caused. "It was all to make sure Grandma would leave everything to me, thinking Barbara had driven me away." Gasps and whispers filled the room. My parents looked from Rachel to me, confusion written all over their faces. The lawyer, Mr. Peter, cleared his throat. "If we may continue," he said, trying to bring the room back to order. Then he began reading Grandma's will. And to everyone's surprise, especially Rachel and Eric, Grandma had left everything to me. Rachel's proud smile disappeared. Her face twisted with shock. "This can't be right," she stammered. "Check again." Mr. Peter adjusted his glasses. "The will is clear. Your grandmother made her final changes very recently." I stood up and faced the room. My voice was calm. "I've known about their affair for months," I said. Rachel wasn't hiding. She's been living in the city, where Eric just so happens to travel for business. I took out the photos and documents from the private investigator and placed them on the table for everyone to see. "Not only did you try to trick Grandma," I said, looking at Rachel, "but you also betrayed me," I added, turning to Eric. Eric stood up, his face full of guilt. "Barbara, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said firmly. "I'm filing for divorce. And I'll be asking for compensation for what you did."
Rachel tried to speak.
"Barbara, we're family. We can fix this." "Family?" I cut in, bitterness in my voice. "You lost the right to call yourself that when you lied and used us for your own gain." My parents, now realizing the truth, looked shocked and pale. "You'll want to find a good lawyer," I told Rachel coldly. Then I turned to Eric. "You'll need one too." As I walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt lighter. The past few months had been painful, but for the first time in a long while, I felt in control of my own life. After everything, I did what I had to do as a woman, as a lawyer, and as someone who had been deeply hurt. I filed for divorce from Eric. I also sued both him and Rachel for the emotional damage they caused. Thanks to the clear evidence from the investigator, the court process was smooth. The judge awarded me a large settlement for emotional harm, a small comfort for what I'd been through. When the judge finally struck the gavel, ending both the marriage and the lawsuit, I knew one thing for sure. This chapter was over, and I was free. I felt both relieved and a little empty. Since the divorce and the lawsuit, I had completely cut ties with Eric and Rachel. Even my parents chose to side with Rachel again. They tried to make her look like the victim, saying she just made mistakes, instead of admitting she had lied and manipulated everyone. That hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. It made me realize that our paths were no longer the same, and maybe never would be again. Thankfully, some friends and relatives showed me support. Their kindness proved that not everyone had been fooled by Rachel's act. That brought me some comfort. One evening, I was putting some of Grandma's old books on a shelf in the living room when I heard a knock at the door. It was Uncle Scott, one of the few relatives who had always stood by me. "Barbara, just wanted to check in on you," he said, taking in the changes I'd made to the house. "Thanks, Uncle Scott." "Come on in," I said, leading him into the living room. He looked around and smiled. "You've done a great job with the place. It feels like your grandmother would have loved this, so full of life again." I smiled too, feeling warm inside. Living here, taking care of her home, it's helped me heal. It's been peaceful in a way. Uncle Scott patted my shoulder gently. "She'd be proud of you, Barbara. Not just for how you've cared for the house, but for standing up for yourself. That's all she ever wanted for you." Later that evening, after he left, I stood in the doorway watching the sunset. The sky was full of color, a beautiful mix of orange, pink, and gold. It reminded me that life could still be beautiful, even after everything. With the house as my safe place, I finally felt ready for whatever came next. I would carry forward the strength and courage Grandma had always believed I had.